By now, I'm sure you've heard of Jaden Ivey. He is a professional basketball player who recently was a part of the Chicago Bulls. He is also a devout Christian. And recently, he posted a series of videos calling out the NBA for celebrating Pride Month. He said the league was celebrating unrighteousness, and then the Chicago Bulls waived him a few hours later, and they cited conduct detrimental to the team. He then goes back on Instagram Live and calls out Steph Curry by name, said he wasn't a real Christian because he didn't outwardly oppose the league's directives. Within hours, many Christian athletes from different leagues rallied behind him. Listen, conviction under pressure is meaningful. I am not going to dismiss that. I agree with it. But again, there's a lot that I want to say, and I can't let this slip past. First of all, there are real issues that people are dealing with right now. Healthcare, housing, jobs, racism, inflation, the fact that we're actively in war right now. But what mobilized the Christian athlete community was the NBA acknowledging that gay people exist. This is the Jesus hill that some people are deciding to die on. I'm not trying to be dismissive, but I do believe that speaks to something. And the reason why I'm speaking on this is because this type of behavior is not unique to Jaden Ivey at all. There are certain sects of believers who do this constantly. They position themselves as the ultimate authority to be able to determine who belongs to God and who doesn't. And that you have a mandate to convert people to your way of thinking. Any form of pushback feels like persecution. The more your theology is built on exclusion, the more that you need enemies to prove that you're faithful. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is privilege. Morality is not a universal concept. What you believe is righteous, someone else has equal conviction and believes that that's wrong. And when your default response to that is, well, they're not receiving what I'm saying, so they're wrong, and I'm being persecuted. Yo, that's not faith. That is a closed system, and a closed system does not reach people. Its primary function is to protect itself. Anytime non-believers don't accept what you're offering, you call it persecution. But this version of Christianity that I'm talking about, it treats persecution like pornography. It's like insatiable. I am passionate about this because this is the very thing that I spent years deconstructing and unlearning. I hear it in my old music. I hear it in how I've interpreted scripture. I see it when I reflect on how I treated people, and it humbled me because that deconstruction removed the need to be right, and it created space for actual relationship with other humans. Listen, the greatest commandment is to love God as you love yourself, and we've heard that a million times. But let me tell you, there's an assumption buried in that statement, and it's something that we don't necessarily address. See, the assumption is that you love yourself, that you really know the totality of what that feels like, what that looks like. And what I've learned is that most people don't really love themselves. When you don't love yourself, you don't know how to truly receive love unless it's broken. And let me zoom in on that word broken, because we can really assume what that means. What I mean by that is your nervous system can't even process a healthy love. It looks boring. It looks weak, and in turn, you either intentionally or subconsciously create conflict, and you surround yourself with similar people who reflect that same wounded dynamic back to you. And then you give your life to God, and in turn, you are told to receive a perfect, blameless, unconditional love, and you don't even have the framework to do that. So then what happens? The toxicity doesn't necessarily disappear. It just shows up in a theological costume. Now you're not mean, you're righteous. Now you're not excluding people, you're defending the faith. You're not gatekeeping what it means to be a true Christian, you're discerning the true believers. And this is how you end up on Instagram Live questioning if Steph Curry is saved at all. See, there's a version of religious zeal that looks holy on the surface, but underneath that layer, it's indistinguishable from a mental health crisis. And what makes it so difficult to identify is that the language is so familiar. Spiritual warfare, persecution, God is testing me, the world is against the truth. These are real theological concepts that have real roots. I think this applies to many people, but I'm specifically going to talk about many Christians. They have an unhealthy relationship with mental health, so they treat it like a faith issue. Man, you don't need therapy. You just need to pray more. And when that's the framework, and it's so difficult to discern the difference, all of it gets affirmation. And what we know now is that Jaden Ivey has shared that he had suicidal thoughts. He broke his leg. He was unable to play basketball. And from that, he lost a sense of identity. Hey, that's what happens when you're a professional athlete and you have a career-threatening injury. I'm not faulting him for that. That's very real. He said he had no peace. He was trying to find what was right, what was true. I can't speak to how the Chicago Bulls organization or his teammates or the league, how they handled his situation. But time and again, I have seen what it looks like when someone is trying to find stability in the midst of pain and uncertainty, when somebody is hurting and they don't have access to real resources. In this case, that looks like clinical support, that looks like a diagnosis. You just have the people around you, and the people around you can only give you what they have. And that's when you use language like, God is testing you. Everything happens for a reason. This is a season of refinement. And that looks like something that we call spiritual bypassing. And look, they mean well. They really do. But if what's actually happening underneath isn't identified, that language doesn't heal anything. It just gives the crisis a name that feels holy in a sense. From there, the person grabs a hold of it and then the community celebrates. And nobody stops it because stopping it would feel like you're standing in the way of a move from God. Now, this type of mindset, it interprets all of these things, the isolation, the estrangement, getting released by your team. It all looks like persecution for speaking the truth. And this sect of the Christian community, their response is to post scripture and call it a victory. But instead of doing that, we should be asking ourselves a question. Is this zeal or is this a person that needs help? And we have to learn how to hold both of those things at the same time. This sort of mindset, this is how Christian nationalism takes root and spreads. To my earlier point, I think a lot of people are learning how to receive conditional and unconditional love. But when you don't understand that concept, your perception is distorted. And in turn, you replace it with something else. And you replace it with certainty. You replace it with control. You replace it with enemies. Because look, if you can identify an enemy, then you can prove that you're right. And if you can prove that you're right, then you can feel secure in what you believe in. And in turn, this is what this becomes. It's a system that rewards exclusion and calls it faith. And for the people who gather around that, they're not necessarily being transformed by the renewing of their mind. It's confirmation bias. And that's how you build a movement that you can grift off of. That's how the math works. So in turn, you'll make more money getting waived by the Chicago Bulls than you ever made playing for them. I mean, y'all know this. The persecution economy is real and it is lucrative. Oh my God. Anyway, switching gears. In all my years of discipleship, I've learned that leading with behavior is always the wrong move. I just saw people. What's up, man? Come eat. Come hang out. How are you doing? That El Roi, the God who sees, being that for someone else, that's where you see the real change happen. It's not in that kind of confrontation, but it's always in presence. You don't have to clean yourself up before you come inside the house. You know what I'm saying? I know for a fact someone is watching this and they've been where Jaden Ivey is right now. And I'm specifically talking about this kind of Christianity. It's sin heavy. It's behavior-based. It's certain. And here's the thing. Even after all that I've said, I would say, that's where most people start in their walk. And at some point, life happens and it changes you. And that process always gets loud before it gets quiet. And that's when grace looks like understanding that everybody is on their own journey. And from there, you're not necessarily responsible for people's growth. You are, however, responsible for people's dignity. And I've just learned that that's like the best way to be effective. My name is Armond WakeUp, and this has been a Kairos moment.